What's up, Facebook? What's up, Instagram? Well, I can't contain myself. I cannot contain this grin on my face. I can't contain it, baby. I'm telling you right now, I can't contain it. And I'm gonna start refraining from some of the slang words I use. I'm trying my best to stop even my slang language, because of certain things, and some people don't like it, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try not to use slang terms, but you know the term I use about the grin. You put that grin on your face. So now you get to put that crap eating grin on your face. And that's a southern colloquial. It may be somewhere else, I don't know, but in the South, I learned that from family. But put your grin on now. This is where you put your grin on. Now, 3 years ago when I went by, it's hard to believe it's been 3 years, first off. Time goes by quick, but 3 years ago when my video went globally viral, what they call the rant, after that, following the weeks and months after that, you had people going, "Oh, we have to be there for people. We have to show compassion." No, you have to show compassion with certain people, not all people. Right now, this is a moment. We can boast in another kind of way. You can, all right? You don't think that little David, when he slayed Goliath, you don't think he didn't stand a little taller when he walked away? He did. Now, he may not have been the kind that, stood at home plate and showed out a little bit more, but everybody has a different way they hit a home run. Everybody has their version of their celebratory. Me personally, because in the early, I knew what was coming. I knew what was going on long before I went viral. I had the documents in place and all these other things. I'm not the only one that knew what was going on. I seem to be the only one that has this massive blueprint, which is true. But at the same time, I'm not the only one that's been awake. I'm not the only one that knows a little bit about our history, a little bit about our foundation. I'm not the only one. And everybody's seeing, again, who the problem solvers are on the front versus who the regurgitators are. Regurgitators can be good people, but they're not problem solvers on the front. That's very important for maintainability and sustainability. So you're still having to learn through this process that. So I'm going to kick this off. The way I'm going to kick it off is what I said last night. When you still hear people out there, and they even claim to be patriots, but you'll hear people out there say little things like, well, why would we have to go through this like this? Look, now all the people who hated on me 3 years ago, 2 years ago, all these haters, and it didn't bother me like that. Now you know why I called them out. Because now you should have discernment on who is who and who ain't, right? Like, so you got all these people out there that claim they were something and somebody and part of this and that, and they were just this, and all for this. Their intent and their motives for the wrong reasons. All right? So when you hear people say, well, why would we have to go through this? If you take everything just from January the 20th to present day, don't even go back to 2024. Let's just for a moment go from January the 20th to present day. You now have bookends. You now know, if you've read my blueprint, no one can argue it now. Now, you can argue and look ignorant, but you can't argue. If you've read it and studied it and applied it, you can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. It's there. So you have solid proof now. You had solid proof before if you were reading and studying, but now you have bookend proof. You have this before with laws and orders. You have this outlier in the middle, and then you have this bookend. And so if you just took the validities from January the 20th to present day, if you just took those validities alone and then go and think about a hypothetical situation where you would drop all that information in one day on the American public, would they be able to handle it? No, they wouldn't. Would they appreciate it? No, they wouldn't. Because look at the people out there look at the low-level fruit on the left who still think President Trump's a dictator. They think he is a New World Order. Think of all the different sides out there that think he is a dictator and all these things. So you're still seeing it, though, out there. You're still seeing some quote-unquote patriots who think they're President Trump supporters. They're not. They're deep state and or they're ignorant. Because, again, the whole reason we're sitting right here is because of a foundation. And it's on what side of it do you stand on. There's a line in the sand. You're either on one side of it or you're on the other side. That's it. So it's up to you to decide that. But what it's going to do is, throughout time, the more and more validities that come, you're going to ostracize yourself and alienate yourself if you continue to say that this ain't what it most certainly is. All right, so I've got my notes to keep me on track tonight because it's been fun. This last couple weeks have been really, really fun because of the validations that's happened. Now, I knew they were coming no matter what. I knew that. But it's still fun because it's watching all of you who have read and studied and applied. You're feeling that validation too. Because you put in the time and you put in the work and you put in the effort to read, study, apply, and you wanted to be a part of world history. You wanted to be a part of it. And you're here. And you have straight up validation now. There's more coming, but you already have enough validity now that if someone's still calling you crazy in your family, friend, or whomever, you don't worry about them. There's not a thing in the world they can do to stop it. There's not a thing in the world they're going to do to change it. All right, when you hear liberals say, oh, they took us back 50 years. No. You did your math wrong. Your butt just went back 250 years. All right, so they can whine and complain, but they don't realize that what's taking place right now is biblical, monumental, and historical. Biblical first. And a lot of you know the story about me back in June 2022, long before the world knew, the ones that know me in the world, of what I'm doing. Sat with an old Marine Corps veteran, and he asked me the toughest questions in the world, which was great. He was in the Marine Corps 17 years. Y'all know what that number means. He was in the Marine Corps 17 years ago. He was 84 years old when I was sitting with him in 2022. And I added him to the documents after we had this conversation in front of about 150 people. They witnessed this. So we have witnesses, more than you need for a sample. And I answered every difficult question he had to do with military law and military orders, paired with federal law and executive orders, proclamations, etc. And he's the one that flexed his muscles and said, it's happening, baby, it's happening. And I added him to the Google Drives. At that time, that's all I had because I didn't have a platform, nothing like that. Added him to him. And the next time I sat with him, he said, son, you have everything you need that the world would need to see what's going on if they only read and study. And you can't control that. But he said, I want you to do one thing for me. On the very front of your documents, it says it's a monumental historical operation. He said, I want you to add that it's a biblical, monumental, historical operation. He said, and everywhere you speak and everywhere you go in this nation, when you speak, you tell them it's a biblical, monumental, historical operation. And God's going to bless you, young man. God's going to bless you because you got the whole package. You got what everybody needs to empower themselves to study. If they'll read, study, and apply, you have everything, the package, to lead them out of the wilderness. You got it, son. Go do your fighting. All right, but put God first. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all things will be added to you. So we got a lot of people out there who are God and Jesus in name only. They only know the name. They ain't got no relationship right here. And you, the people, can tell now. You definitely can tell now. You can tell all the ones who are attacking me. You can tell they're either ignorant or deep state and or both. You cannot support President Trump without supporting laws and orders. It's straight and simple. You can't. There's no other option for you. You either believe in laws and orders or you don't. It's like the Bible tells you. The Bible says it's better to walk away and not know the words in this book. Completely put it aside, walk away and act like you don't know, than it is to know and to deny. It also tells you that fresh water and salt water can't come from the same spring. Now, we're human. We do make mistakes. However, if you justify your mistakes and all you do is always justify your mistake versus trying to correct your mistake, God knows. He knows. He also knows the intent and the motives of man, the hearts of man. He knows. All right? So you can tell right now. And then when you read the scripture, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thine art with me. Then he tells you, I will prepare a table in front of your enemies. So God's telling you way back yonder, way back there, that there were already enemies there. If you're going to have enemies, we have to stand tall. No weapon formed against you shall prosper if you're walking in the Spirit. See, a Christian walking in the Spirit will offend the Christian walking in the flesh all day long. It's a little bitty, razor-thin line there of how you believe, what you believe, and how you talk, how you pray. Right? A lot of these people, they want money. It's the lust of money. What does the Bible say? It's not money. It's the lust of money that's the root of all evil. So you can tell out there, these people who have attacked me, now they're like a rat. They're a rat who's been exposed. But their holes have been plugged. Now they're out. Rats operate in the dark more than they do in the light. So now the light's on them and they're running everywhere and their holes have been plugged. So naturally they're going to retaliate. Naturally they're going to talk about you. Naturally they're going to kick, cuss, moan, fuss, and all these other things, call you names, etc., and call you a liar and a grifter and all these things, because they ain't got nothing. And they never were anything, because they ain't seeking God first. They're seeking their self-flesh. That's all it is. So now, you, the people, you have straight up validity. Every day is validation. President Trump's coming out every day with validation. Every day, validation. Every day. And there's not a thing in the world the evil can do to stop it. Not a thing. So, if you're someone out there, you're still on the fence, and you're trying to figure it out, if you're, it's like, well, you got to read and study what they're using. All right? Even as an operator, you could be on this level and still not know what their next move is up here, because that's the whole point of it. All right, so again, I'm going to get into a few things that's happened. So this is going to be a fun one. This is what I really love. Oh, this stuff's fun. Because you've seen straight up validity all this week and last week. You've seen it a lot, but I'm going to show you some more. All right, so I'm going to make one more note, because I just thought of one more thing that I need to add on here to show one more thing. Here we go. All right, there we go. Now we're good. So I had a question that came in this week from a fella, and it's a great question. And it's a simple question, but it's a great question. And now, today, March the 18th, I think he wrote to me, I'd have to go back and look, it was just a few days ago. So, all of a sudden, today, the answer's already there again. Now, I answered him, and I did a long post this week, a long post about this, and I put all the stuff where you can go look it up again. I've addressed this stuff before, but slightly different. All right, but today, something happened today with President Trump with this question, and I'm going to talk about that. So we're going to get there. Let me make sure I write that one down too. So the question was this: how can a judge block a federal order? All right. How can a judge block a federal order? Well, you have to go and look and see what kind of judge it was, who it is, what level are they. Well, it was a district judge, all right, from Washington, D.C. All right. Well, you have district, court of appeals, Supreme Court. It's real simple, like that. District, court of appeals, Supreme Court. So he's down here, this judge who blocked the 1798 Aliens Act and deportations. All right, so this was an act put into place in 1798. So when people say little things like, oh, Derek Jonhson, that was 5 years ago. That order don't matter that Donald Trump federalized the National Guard 5 years ago. That's old. 1798. All right, liberals are going crazy right now because of an act from 1798. It's not a number just made up. It's not like 1798 was some cool number. No, the year 1798. All right. So this judge is saying, oh, it has no precedent. Oh, yeah, yes, it does. Because it's this simple. Not a single liberal or Democrat in a position, meaning House Representative or Senator, not a single Democrat or liberal has told President Trump, you can't do that. They've started lawfare on him. They did all kinds of stuff. Oh, he was with a hooker 40 years ago and can't prove it. None of that. They started that, but they never said, you can't do that. Because all President Trump would have to say is, why did you keep it in the law then? Why am I the chief executive officer of the executive branch? My role and duty is to enforce the law and get Congress to do their job. Well, why is it a law? Why didn't you revoke it? Why didn't you abolish it? Very key to listen to this conversation we're about to have. Very key to listen. Listen to terminology. Guys, males, some of you do, but this is why 85% of my demographic are females, because they listen. They don't hear, they listen. All right, big difference. You got to listen to terminology. You got to listen to sentence structure. You got to listen to punctuation. You got to envision it. All right, you got to listen. Very key. They never said you can't do that, because it's all laws and orders. It's laws in the law books. All right, so if they didn't want him to enforce the law, so that's why panic set in way back in 2016, right? That's when the panic started. That's when the real fight was in another manner. That's why many people right now, especially a lot of podcasters, they do look kind of silly trying to be in the fight now in another manner. Not that they can't be good people, they can be. But that's what the fight was really back here. This is where it was really like you needed to know what was going on and go, oh, this is about to be fun right here. That's when, on the campaign trail, when I heard him say, I have 200 generals backing me and more to come, that was a quote-unquote conspiracy theory for years, that 200 generals said, never again will we let happen in this country what happened under JFK, meaning what took place November 22nd, 1963. What was released today? All the files. Showtime, baby. It's time, baby. World history's coming. Right? So, 200 generals said that. That's when the fun started, was 2016. That's when he really should have known what was going on, because that's when the war started for sure with the global alliance. All right, and that's when they started smoking the rats out. So, again, terminology. All right, so this week an article read. This goes exactly with the judge blocking. There was an article about the judge blocking, and then it had some organization. And this organization, random person, has a quote. And it says that everything that President Trump is doing is unlawful because we're not in a wartime. We're not in wartime laws. That's what it said in the article. All right, first off, you got to go back to what I talk about all the time. When in normal conversation, casual conversation, especially all of you civilians who've never been in the military, this is not a knock on that. It's proving a point. It's okay. You ain't got to be in the military to know what's going on. Proving a point here. When in casual conversation, sitting with your friends, drinking mimosas or whatever you're doing in your little casual time with your friends, since when do you use the terms capitulation, white flag of surrender, occupation, occupied, and things like that? Since when? You don't. Because they're not casual terms. They're not government terms. Those are all military terms. All military. So why is President Trump dropping all these terms all the time in his speeches? Why? Why would he all of a sudden have this sequence where you could go, now there's some decodes in that. Look at this. Every year, every speech has military terminology. And it's not usual military terminology either. That's why we've had a lot of not a lot of veterans, but there's been a lot of veterans that have, to all the accumulation of people that I've met, there's been some veterans go, well, why wouldn't I know about this? I don't know. Why don't you? I'm a veteran. I know what's going on. Why don't you know the laws and orders? I had an email this past week of a veteran going, love you, brother. No, most military don't know the laws and orders. They don't. And it's because you're in a unit and you're focusing on your unit and you're focusing on the orders coming all the way down to that unit. And that's okay. But when you get combative about it, that's the problem we have. It most certainly is in laws and orders, but guess what they are? They're unique. They're unconventional. They're irregular. They're clandestine. They're covert. All right? They did this on purpose to keep people quelled, meaning like this, the best as possible. And success have they had on that. But even if you get mad or upset or bitter or frustrated, that's still just an emotion. As long as you're not physically hurting somebody or yourself, get mad all you need to. If that's what it takes to get your attention, then that may be what it took to say, hey, this guy keeps talking about this stuff. I need to go read and study this because he says that it'll bring me peace. It'll bring me solace. It'll bring me joy. It will make me smile. It will put a grin on my face because it's all laws and orders that I didn't write, I didn't pass. That's why you have all, those of you who have given me a #1 bestseller, but also given me the platform, y'all have done that first off. But every one of you, now you know, you can see the ones when they're attacking and claiming to be President Trump supporter, they can't be. There's no way you can be. It's all public laws and orders. They're public. Right now, you're not going to sit down on the internet if you don't know where to look, you don't know what to Google, you don't know the terminology. You're not going to sit down and find, and then if you did, guess how many tabs you would have on your computer? Thousands. You'd have like little tabs. You wouldn't even be able to click on them because there's so many. So that's why there's a book now, and I'm the only one with the book. And I put it all in this package in a chronological order of how they did this. And God just gives some other people talents that some people don't have. But it don't mean it's not there because you can't comprehend it or understand it. It's there. It just means you got to study harder, work harder if you want to know. Right? So it makes people look atrocious when they say it's not there, and it most certainly is there. You just may not understand it. The reason why that's important, tying into all this, is the fact that when someone out there, let's say that article wasn't part of the operation. I have reason to show that it is 47 U.S. Code 606, part of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. I have reason to show that that's part of a wartime thing, even this article, because they knew in these mainstream articles that X amount of people were still going to read it and keep them quelled until they want to do what? Unveil everything. So, but if you really want to know what's going on, then all I show you are what's straight up invoked in laws and orders. We most certainly are in wartime orders. Most certainly are. The way you know that is you got to go read that. And it depends on where you are at your level of education and your level of knowledge. It's going to depend on where you are to go, oh, I don't know anything about military. Or I don't know anything about special operations. I don't know anything about legislation. It depends on where you are. So if you know some of that, you're going to fare a little bit better. But if you don't, then you got to start with the umbrella first, the terminology, the glossary, the index, and then you work your way down. Because this article with the judge and also this comment that we're not in wartime, yes, we are. And that to me is a calm to show people that whoever falls, whoever read that article, if you read it and you know, then you know what I'm saying. If someone's out there still and they've never heard of me and they read that, then guess what they're going to do? Depending on if they're Republican or Democrat. If they're Democrat, they're going to go, oh, he's a dictator and blah, blah. If they're Republican, they're going to be like, well, he can still deport people. He's the president. So it keeps people where they need to be until they're ready to accept what's going to be put out, unveiled, right? History is going to account for this right here. History is going to account for it. I'm already accounting for it if people will go read and study it, but history is going to account for that right there. That is not an error whatsoever. That's not a play on emotion. That's none of that. That is put there April 2nd. What an interesting date that is. President Trump put that on there April the 2nd, 2023. What did he just say on True Social yesterday? That April the 2nd this year is Liberation Day? What a coincidence that is. So funny. I love this stuff. So now watch this. You got the judge, quote unquote, blocking. You have this quote, we're not in wartime orders. Then you have Tom Homan. I love Tom Homan, man. That dude is awesome. At CPAC this year, Tom Homan walked out and he goes, right out the gate, first words out of his mouth, he said, first off, I'd like to say, I don't give a shit what you think about me. If there's hit pieces in the paper tomorrow, I don't care what you think about me. Say what you want. We have a job to do. We're saving America, and that's what we're doing. Now, I know all of this was strategically planned. But for the ones that don't know that either, that think this is all in live time, then still, that emotion right there, if someone felt that in real time, then great. Because he's saying exactly what I've been saying. If you hate me, you got a problem with something else other than me. You got a problem with facts and real truth of laws and orders. And if you claim to be a President Trump supporter and you still hating on me, you ain't no President Trump supporter. You are deep state and or ignorant. That's what you are. And so this is why it's important, ladies and gentlemen, because of the discernment. We're in an information warfare, but we're in a spiritual warfare first. That's the biggest thing. Because the demons and the evil are trying to confuse you, trying to trick you, and trying to deceive you. All right? What does the Bible say? That the devil came to do what? Steal, kill, and destroy. But he can't destroy something if you ain't got anything. See, that's why terminology matters. Listen to the sequence. Steal, then kill, then destroy. All right, so he ain't going to come after you if you don't have anything. That's why people like me have to be firm on a foundation, because you get all kinds of stuff. Oh, do you get all kinds of stuff? All right, they come at you. They do. They try. That's why you have to be firm on a foundation on the rock. That's why you can't be God in name only, Jesus in name only. You better be spirit right here. Have it right here daily. Somehow, some way, some form. It better be right here. That's why it's important. All right, so you got to listen to terminology. Tom Homan. Then he turned around and said, just yesterday in an article, he said, I don't care what a judge thinks. Now listen to that. Make sure you're listening, not just commenting. I see a lot of comments on Instagram. Make sure you're listening. If you're too busy trying to comment, make sure you... I see some big chunks coming through. Make sure you're listening. All right. This is very key. This is validation right here. Tom Homan said, we are going to keep deporting. I don't care what a judge thinks. Now, this is where you can absolutely put the hammer down on a patriot who claims to be a patriot, but they're acting like a rhino or a liberal. But liberals are what they are. But if there's a Republican out there that's wishy-washy on all this, this is where you put the hammer down on them right here. This is where you get them. You go, it's one side of the line or the other. Either you hop over there and call yourself a Democrat or a liberal, which right now, unfortunately, that is the party of disruption. That is the party that don't have a clue about our foundation. They don't have anything. They don't know anything about the Declaration, anything about the Constitution. They don't know anything. They're the party of confusion. They're the party of deceit. They're that party right now. They've been that party. So, again, you got to listen. He said, I don't care what a judge thinks. So here's the deal. If President Trump was acting like a dictator and going against laws and orders without due process of the law and or what we're about to talk about, then it would be a contradiction on the very fundamentals that he stands on of laws and orders if they're not going by laws and orders. And you having your main guy, your main director, all right, your border czar saying, I don't care what a judge thinks, then you got to know some laws and orders that's been invoked to know that he just validated that there is most certainly PEDs in place. PEDs, Presidential Emergency Action Documents. They are draft classified. You're not going to Google those. All right, but there's enough supporting evidence around that I've been talking about that supports what Tom Homan just said to show you that we are most certainly in a wartime situation. President Donald John Trump is a wartime president by the original definition of a wartime president, of a president who is protecting his people in a national defense, not international starting wars and stuff like that. In a national defense. There's a big difference in that. Huge difference. And people, I still think, have not really truly listened to me and paid attention in a good way. All right? Listen to what he said. He said, I don't care what a judge thinks. That means there is a presidential emergency action document, and President Trump validated that. He said just the other day, he said, I've signed over 400 executive actions. There's only 130 on the Federal Register since January the 20th alone. Where are the others? Where are they? He told you I signed 400 executive actions. There's 130 on the Federal Register. Where are the others? Where are they? Presidential Emergency Action Documents. They are a series, they're draft classified, but they're a series of executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, all in a bundle. They are pre-prepared, where he just signs them really fast. They were pre-prepared. Guess who established those? Dwight D. Eisenhower, former president and 5-star general. We've only had 8 5-star generals since the Civil War. They're rare. Rare. He was the supreme commander on top of that. All right. Why does President Trump quote Dwight D. Eisenhower all the time? Because Dwight D. Eisenhower established the Presidential Emergency Action Documents. Also, accompanying the Presidential Action Document, guess what it does? It expands the power of the president past their normal terms. That's why some idiot a couple years ago that came after me, some dummy trying to seek publicity, oh, they want it so bad, dummy says that a president can't serve past his 2 terms. Yes, he can. Oh, he can too. But it's unique laws and orders. Do you want to use them willy-nilly? No, you don't. But unique laws and orders in place, Presidential Emergency Action Documents, expands the power of the president past their normal terms. Eisenhower established that. 5-star general. He was the president who had the military-industrial complex speech that he didn't like where the military was going because of this right here. And where did it go? This right here. And it did what? It made a many good men, and even women now, made a many of them go after this, not this. That's why they don't know the laws and orders right here and right here, because they were in the military for the wrong reasons. Still could be a good person, and they still could hop on board now. No big deal. But again, motives, intent and motives. Dwight D. Eisenhower. But guess what accompanies a PED? A continuity of government. because he established that as well. See, there's two different laws in this nation, military law and federal law. Why is the Supreme Court of 2016 clarifying in the Military Justice Act of 2016, why of all times, think about it, think where we were in 2016 and look at the chronological order, why was the Supreme Court out of nowhere clarifying that military courts are separate than federal courts? Military Justice Act 2016. That wasn't President Trump's Supreme Court that they try to separate and say, that's Trump's Supreme Court. No, this was Obama's Supreme Court. What was Obama's Supreme Court doing clarifying that military laws, military courts are separate from federal laws and federal courts? We already know that. People who knew that in the military, we already know that. We have to go by the Uniform Code of Military Justice and regular law. When you're in the military, you have to go by UCMJ and federal law. When you get a speeding ticket, let's just take a regular old speeding ticket. When you get a speeding ticket and you're in active duty, you have to take that speeding ticket to your commander, and let's say you got 3 or 4 in a row. They go on courts martial you because they're gonna be like, hey, something ain't jiving here. You're not getting it. So they'll start out with what they call a counseling statement first. Then they'll hop to courts martial if they have to. If they're like, hey, why do you keep getting speeding tickets? What are you not doing? Why aren't you learning this? So see, not only do you have to go to regular court to fight your ticket, then you're going to be going to a courts martial, to a military court. That's why that's very important to know that they clarified that. All right. So right now, and I'm going to read this quote where it's easy to read. All right, if I can find where I did with it. What did I do with it? I may have to look it up again. Let's see here. Marquee. I had it right here. Perfect. And let's see right here. Where did it go? I had that perfect. Oh, right here. So, there's a house that I know really well. I've been in it once. But Marquis de Lafayette stayed in it years ago. The only thing that liberals are hanging on right now are J6. J6, J6. Oh, Trump calls J6, 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 J6. That's all they know. Because they know nothing about our foundation. They know nothing about history. They know nothing about the Revolutionary War. They know nothing about the Declaration. They know nothing about the Constitution. They're also Constitution in name only. They don't even quote the Declaration. Now, you never hear them say I never even heard a Democrat or liberal say the word Declaration. Ever. Ever. So they're hanging on this J6 thing, and I'm going to show you something that Marquis de Lafayette said. When the government violates the people's rights, insurrection is for the people and for each portion of the people the most sacred of rights and the most indispensable of duties. He's a key figure in American and French revolutions. Key figure. Listen again. When the government violates the people's rights, insurrection is for the people and for each portion of the people the most sacred of rights and the most indispensable of duties. See, this is what's wrong when you forget your foundation, when you forget your history. Also, another that I have in my documents, and I put it in the book. See, what you're going to see right now in this, why it's very critical to know the law, but also know the people who didn't know, and to keep the people that knew from the beginning to always listen to them unless they do get bought somehow. You can't eradicate evil. All right, but this is why it's important for discernment moving forward. When we get to the glory phase, when we get to the golden age, we cannot let up. You cannot let up. You still cannot kick back and go, oh, I trust you and I trust you. No, you have to apply this to your life daily. somehow, some form, some facet. But I love this quote. You've heard me say it, Mark Twain. In the beginning of change, the patriot is a scarce man, and brave and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. All right, so you're seeing that a lot right now. You're seeing a lot of people come out and speak. All right, now, let's go back to old chick in the article. All right, the liberals are spewing over here about J6. That's all they know. That's why this is so funny. That's all they talk about is J6. See how much we've dwindled them with special operations. See how much they've dwindled down to they have nothing to stand on. Now, watch this. Marbury versus Madison. Now, you've heard me talk about this. Those of you who've been following me, you have heard me talk about Marbury versus Madison, 1803, all the time. Guess what Mark Levine was talking about on his show 2 nights ago on Fox News? He and Newt Gingrich had a conversation. If you were watching, that was the one time you could have watched Fox News. If you would go watch Mark Levine and Newt Gingrich, watch them talk about history, and then take me with the laws and orders that's currently invoked, currently in place, all public laws and orders, but I can break all of it down in one sitting, most of it, but still, depending on what topic we're talking about. If you'll watch him talk about our history and our founders and executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch, and then come watch me, that's only 2 people you need, because they can cover all the history and the founders a lot more, and then me bring in what's currently in place right now, what President Trump and the military and the world leaders are using. And you would have your complete package. But you've heard me talk about Marbury versus Madison, 1803. And in layman's terms, we won't go into the terminology back then. In layman's terms, this is what took place. They ruled, it was a landmark case and a landslide case. This was very critical way back in 1803. They ruled that any statute that looks like a law that does not support the Constitution is null and void. It means it has no standing whatsoever. None. But look what's taking place. This is why you got to know a little bit of history. All right, so the executive branch and the legislative branch are the 2 branches that are elected by us, the people. Now listen carefully. You got to go back to listening. The executive branch and the legislative branch are elected by we, the people. The judicial branch are appointed by these right here. So when a judge blocks what the people want, it's simple math. See, we elected these 2. And when we tell them this is what we want, then this right over here, these judges better be doing what they want. Because what they want is what we want. That's how that works. Now, that hadn't happened for years. Congress went awry because people stopped caring. People entrusted all the wrong people for the years. People stopped being like me. People stopped reading, studying, applying, knowing what's going on. We, the people. So that's why we, the people, almost was abolished and almost lost all of it, because that we, the people, forgot their foundation. Forgot about our setup, our system. It's not a bad system. It's dependent on who's running it, who's operating it. And you should want to be there for the right reasons. And we had congressmen and women through the years who were there for what? Then when they got in it, guess what? On the backside, the lobbyists. Those are the ones that are the bad boys. The lobbyists, the mafia, all these back here, these evil spirits that you didn't know and see. That's why I've told people, stop trying to tell who's good and bad. Stop. You don't know that. You don't have a clue who's good and bad until they show you who's good and bad. You don't know that. But even right now, we're still in an operation. This whole thing is an operation. It's not real time, live time from another manner. It is in one way, it's not in another. But it's an operation. There is a parameter around that. It's why too many people are jumping ship and doing this stuff. It's because you don't know who's good and bad. You don't know that. Don't worry about that right now. What you need to be focusing on are the laws and the orders in place, and you can identify the fruits, the good fruits, if you know this right here, because, again, there's been nothing but good taking place. Not according to the left, but they don't matter right now. All right, so the executive branch and legislative branch. That's very key that people apply that. Because Marbury versus Madison, this is why it's very key with that ruling in 1803. The Chief Justice, Marshall, knew better. All right, that's why when they made that ruling, here's why. The executive branch and judicial branch can abolish, the executive and legislative branch can abolish the judicial branch. Not the branch itself, meaning like, oh, let's get rid of it. But meaning this, if they want to fire and impeach every single judge, they can, because they appointed them. They're not elected officials. So if the legislative and executive branch said, all right, wipe them out, all judges gone, enjoy your retirement, get out of here, they can do that. But especially if we're saying that's what we want a clean out of all the judges, get them out of there, get them gone, that's what we want, then that's what these elected officials have to do. That's the power we have. 535 members of Congress work for us. It ain't the other way around. So, when people say, why did it have to look like this? Because 335 million people let 535 people push them around without knowing how it works, your rights, your First Amendment rights, and how to apply them accurately. See, Madison is known as the father of the Constitution. James Madison. Here's your founding father having to go into a Supreme Court, the main writer of the Constitution, the father of it. He's having to go into the Supreme Court 16 years after he wrote the dang thing to say, any statute that looks like a law that doesn't support what I wrote here and what the people adopted is null and void. So you wonder why we look atrocious now? We had the founding father who wrote most of the Constitution having to go in there to the Supreme Court and clarify it 16 years later. 14 years after they put it into action in 1789. I mean, come on, people. No wonder we look atrocious right now. No wonder Americans look the way they look. And then you wonder why it had to look this way? It had to look this way because most Americans don't even know how it works. That's definitely the liberals. Liberals have no clue that the judicial branch can be wiped out just like that by the executive and legislative. Clean slate. Let's go again. That's why it's key. So now, when you take what Little Missy said in the article, well, you're going to call her Little Missy, because most of them little reporters, they think they know everything. They don't know a thing. All right? They don't know anything. We're going to call her Little Missy. All right? Little Missy said we're not in a wartime. Laws. Yes, we are. We most certainly are. I say it like a broken record. So, if I had a record, I wouldn't break a record, but unless it was something evil, I guess I would. But I need to get a vinyl record and just smash it like a Marilyn Manson and go, pew, like smash it, evil. Right? December the 20th, 2019. Now this is where it's going to get fun. December the 20th, 2019. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. Title 50 is titled War and National Defense. War and National Defense. They didn't say international. It says War and National Defense. Chapter 33 of Title 50, Chapter 33 is the War Powers Resolution Act of 1973. Section 1550 was not put in that Chapter 33, Title 50 until December the 20th, 2019. So what they're teaching you right now, So the guy who asked the question about the judge being blocked, guess what today? Guess what happened today? They put in for impeachment of that judge. Clean out, baby. Drain that swamp. Drain that swamp. Why do people chant that if they don't even know what they're looking at? I mean, that's pretty sad right there. That's like getting ready for March Madness and saying that you're the biggest Duke fan in the world, and you don't even know who that. It'd be like Maryland and Kentucky playing, and you're yelling, "Go Blue Devils, yeah!" And everybody's looking at you like, this is Kentucky and Arizona playing. Why are you yelling, "Go Duke"? That's what it would be like. It's the same thing. So if you don't know what you're looking at, how can you appreciate it? Because you're watching the swamp being drained right in front of you. It's being drained daily. Now, it's a strategic operation, and most of this has already happened, but this is how they're rolling it out. This is the dominoes. So how can you be a President Trump supporter yelling, "Drain that swamp," but you don't even know what you're looking at? You're supposed to be enjoying this. The ones who still ain't, your friends and family, maybe I'm talking to them. You're supposed to be enjoying this. You ain't supposed to be mad and upset. You ain't supposed to be reacting to an article. You're watching the swamp being drained. So what they're doing, this is so genius how they're doing it. They're reteaching you the Constitution. So all these out there who are Constitution in name only, like 99.9% of liberals, they're teaching all of you the Constitution right in front of you. Article 1, legislative branch. Article 2, executive branch. Article 3, judicial branch. They're teaching it right in front of you. And I'm about to show you how they've done it. Again, December the 20th, 2019. There has never been a date put in a clause, right, like this. This is showing you, hey, we're about to do something unique and different. Bipartisan and constitutional. All right, so in that clause of 1550 under Chapter 33, the War Powers Act of Title 50, your war and national defense, Congress put this there. Now, watch this. I'm going to read this again because you got to read certain things. So bear with me. When you hear people out there say that it is unconstitutional for the military to operate with civil, law enforcement, etc., they do not know what they're talking about. About to read that. In the past, you've heard people say that. Then you've heard them say things like, oh, well, the Constitution bars that. No, it don't. You ain't reading. You're not reading the same Constitution I am. Maybe you wrote your own Constitution, but you're not reading the Constitution I am. When it says, the only thing the Constitution says is that Congress declares the war. The Commander-in-Chief, the President, is Commander-in-Chief of the armies and the Navy. All right? That's all it says. So I'm going to show you how Congress, the liberals should be yelling at Congress more than they're yelling at President Trump, even though they shouldn't be yelling at him at all. But just for sake of, for a moment, I'm going to show you how they should be yelling more at Congress than they should be at President Trump, because Congress did this. All right, so watch this. This is Joint Publication 3-57, Civil-Military Operations, July 9th, 2018. Updated. Letter A. Per the Posse Comitatus Act and Department of Defense regulations, the U.S. is generally prohibited from employing Title 10 United States Code Department of Defense forces to provide direct military involvement to enforce the law of the U.S. unless expressly authorized by the Constitution or Congress. Now, I read that as bland as I could. Now I'm going to go back and read it with some emphasis, because there's some people who just don't listen. They hear, but they don't listen. Now, let's place some emphasis here. Per the Posse Comitatus Act and Department of Defense regulations, so meaning normally, the U.S. is generally prohibited from employing Title 10, United States Code, Department of Defense forces, meaning regular forces, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Air Force, to provide direct, not indirect, direct military involvement to enforce the law of the United States unless, keyword, authorized by the Constitution or Congress. So it's telling you that normally, no, you wouldn't want to use your regular armed forces to enforce the law. No, you don't want that to be something that the president does just because he can. No. However, if they're showing you the fruits of their labor and they're showing you in a unique situation, which is what's going on, that it's needed and necessary, then it says unless authorized by Congress or the Constitution. It don't say the president. It says by Congress. So now go back to the judge blocking. Now go back to little Missy saying what she said, we're not wartime. Then go back to Tom Homan telling you, I don't care what a judge thinks. Then in order for us to flip over on the other side, to rewrite history in a good way, meaning moving forward, but to also rid all of the swamp, rid all the corruption, rid everything, in order for that to be a solid operation, meaning solid, that we got to do everything by the law, everything by laws and orders, everything by due process of the law, meaning you can't shortcut anywhere along the way. When you do a clean out, it's got to be thorough. It's got to be, right to the T of the law. That's telling you that there are PEDs in place, meaning that there are answers back here from bipartisan, all ethnicities, all nationalities. This is not some white bunch of men, we're going to show it to them. It's none of that. This means that this is a world operation, strategic operation, special operation, unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, clandestine operations, covert operations, overt operations, and they're all there. I outline them daily, and we're going to cover a few more tonight. But this right here applied what just took place. The judge blocking, little Missy saying we're not wartime, and then December the 20th, 2019 was not President Trump. That's Congress putting that in Title 50, Chapter 33. Then, fast forward. You hear me say it all the time, but March 23rd, 2020. All right, President Trump declared a verbal national emergency March 13th, 2020. Verbal. Not on paper. Verbal. All right. March 23rd, 2020, just 10 days later, there are mainstream articles back then saying that President Trump's going to install a general just in case law breaks down. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't install generals. That's not how it's done. That's not the right terminology. That's not the correct terminology. You don't install a general. You would just put a general, you go, all right, you're my commanding general. All right, you're my guy. Raising Cane, you're my dude. Whoever it is, you're my guy. You don't install a general. It's not the right terminology. Nothing, that's nowhere in military terminology whatsoever. So that right there was a calm for you saying, in case law breaks down. That right there means military law, constitutional, federal law. There's two separate laws. Military Justice Act 2016 clarifies that. Military law, constitutional, federal law. All right, so they're saying, okay, if we have to do this, well, what chatter started up back then and happened throughout 2021? See, liberals are real laggards. You don't want to be a laggard, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be a laggard. Don't be come crawling like a snail way up. Liberals just last year started, and then the year before a little bit. Oh, Donald Trump's going to terminate the Constitution. He wants to abolish the Constitution. See, they heard a little something, but because they don't know any foundation and they don't know anything about the Constitution, their Constitution in name only, they don't have a clue what they're doing. And it's not President Trump they should be mad at, because guess who Article 1 is? Legislative branch. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution is the writ of habeas corpus, the suspension clause. They can suspend the Constitution for rebellion or invasion of public safety. Public safety. So national security, public health, COVID, border. That's what took place in 2020. Then President Trump came in with March 27, 2020 Executive Order 13912, and he federalized 1 million reserve components to active duty. That shows you joint between Congress and the president. Joint operations with that alone. All right, so it wasn't President Trump overruling or doing something he wasn't supposed to do. Congress, what's it say right here? Joint publication, again, says the U.S. is generally prohibited from using Title 10 forces to provide direct military to enforce the law unless expressly authorized by Constitution or Congress. All right, so don't say anything about the president in this joint operation military. Executive Order 13912 and Executive Order 13919 is when Title 10 federalized 1 million reserve components. Title 10, Section 12302 and 12304. All right, every veteran, we raised our right hand to Title 10, Section 502. So you can't have one Title 10 without the other. If you're a veteran, you have to believe what's going on. It's one side of the line or the other. You have no other options. You can't straddle the line. You either believe in it or you don't. You're either with it or you're not. Same thing with you out there, patriots. You're either with it or you're not. Pick your line. Go ahead. Stand on what side of the line. But don't be wishy-washy. The fence is high. And guys like me are going to knock you right in the face, right back over your side of the fence. You ain't coming back. No, you're not coming over here until you are dedicated and committed. All right? Because if you come back over on our side, then we're going to hold you down and go, no, you're going to learn this. You're not climbing back over that fence. You're going to learn this. And you're going to hear me sound like a broken record. You're going to learn this. Title 10, but 1 million reserve components. It wasn't some little order, 3,000 troops, 2,000 troops. This was 1 million reserve components. Reserve, ladies and gentlemen, do not serve dual missions. They're federal only. That's why that's key. That's why all these foreign aircraft are on reserve bases and National Guard bases. Regional airports, municipal airports, all World War II Army airfields before the Air Force was even established. They were World War II Army airfields. That's where most of your foreign aircraft right now in the last 5 and 6 years have been flying since these orders have been put in place. Real simple. So you've seen that right here. Article 2 of the Constitution is playing out right in front of you. Article 2 is your president, your executive branch. All right, so right now, this is solid proof right now. If you believe, well, let me retrace it. If you were sitting there on the fence last year when you heard me showing you President Trump with the Adjutant General in Texas, February last year,